Needless Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs, welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast. I am your host, Dave West, and I am getting ready to put some Vipers into storage. If you've been following the YouTube channel, you know I reviewed the new G.I. Joe Classified Retro Vipers last week, and they have completely replaced the older Vipers. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about, because I talk enough about that on Audible Interlude, a G.I. Joe podcast, which you should check out wherever you get your podcasts. And you should check out on June the 2nd, our next live stream on the Needless Things YouTube channel. Probably June 9th, also a live stream, because Hasbro Pulse is doing a G.I. Joe live stream on the 4th, 2 days after we record our live stream, of course. And then live again on the 16th, and probably not live, no, definitely not live the week after that, because the 16th is the week of Joe Fest, and we'll be doing a sort of Joe Fest hype-up episode. And you can't concentrate too much, because there will be people hanging out watching the live stream that are not going to Joe Fest, so it can't be completely Joe Fest, but it'll be a lot Joe Fest. And then the week after that will be the panel that we record at Joe Fest, and then I don't know what I'm going to do with the special secret panel this year, because last year it went on the Patreon, and there is no more Patreon, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. We'll figure it out. So I am here today. Our interview, the meat of the episode, as I like to say, is a conversation with Carlos Espinoza, who is the man behind Rise of Nexus, a forthcoming... the Kickstarter should be launching in September, and that's going to be just for the O-ring figures. But there is going to be an accompanying strategy game that has all kinds of interesting potential, and we'll talk about that during the interview, so stay tuned for that. I ordered, before we get to that, I've got to do my intro thing, and by the way, this intro is exclusive to the audio version of the show. It is not available on the video version that you can see on the Needless Things YouTube channel, because it's just the video of the interview. So, I watched the Pee Wee Herman documentary on HBO. It's a tough watch, to be honest. I grew up with Pee Wee, saw the movie in the theater, saw Pee Wee's Big Adventure in the theater in 1985, and I thought we had seen it for my birthday, but it came out in August, so clearly that is not correct. And maybe it was for a friend of mine's birthday, or maybe we just went, just a bunch of us just went because we were so hyped for it. My parents, oddly, both enjoyed it, and we just had a really good time watching that movie, much better than the time we had watching E.T., which was one of the other times. So let's see, just right off the top of my head, as a family, and I believe with friends of mine in tow, we saw Pee Wee's Big Adventure, we saw E.T., and we saw Jaws 3D, which is quite a combination of films, right? But I specifically remember being in the theater with several of my friends and my parents for those movies. And I would say Pee Wee's Big Adventure was the best experience of them, because Jaws 3D... we didn't know this at the time, because that came out in 1983, right? Because E.T. was 82, Pee-wee was 85, and Jaws 3D was 83. I was correct. Good for me. So I'm 7 years old, and we go to see Jaws 3D, and the 3D glasses don't work for me, and the whole time I spend the movie telling one of my parents, I don't remember which one, probably my mom, because I can't imagine my dad would be bothered to sit next to me, that I couldn't see right. and I don't remember the response. I don't remember like what happened with it, but I just remember like all of my friends being like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." Which, by the way, yes, a bunch of 7-year-olds went to see this presumably rated R movie. Did we have? I don't think we had a PG-13 at this point in time. Let's see here. Let me do a little internet sleuthing since I already pulled it up anyway. Jaws 3D. The rating is not immediately pop. Oh, PG. No, it's PG. Okay, so we were it's reasonable. It was reasonable, but also weird. But yeah, I just remember it not being a good experience. Whereas Pee Wee's Big Adventure, we were all laughing, cheering, having the absolute best time. And my parents, like I said, even enjoyed the movie. And then Pee Wee's Playhouse was something I was talking to my sister about it, and she commented, I'm surprised mom and dad even let us watch that. But I have to imagine that, I mean, it's not like they were sitting there watching it with us. I don't know if they would have had an awareness of Pee Wee's more, not adult oriented, but the more innuendo type stuff he'd done on HBO. I don't know if they would have had an awareness of that at all. So I think it probably just didn't occur to them to wonder about Pee Wee's Playhouse, or maybe they didn't know we were watching it at all. I don't know. But I don't think they would have had an opinion on it because the movie, the Playhouse had some subversive moments, which many of which are in the documentary, which I highly recommend. Uh, but the movie was relatively innocent. The only thing in that really is probably up in the dinosaur when he says, "Tell me about your big butt." Like, it's just a funny sort of double entendre type of thing, but it's not really all that. It's just funny. But anyway, I got the FOMO because I'm on a big physical media kick right now with music, with movies, more than ever because I see what's happening. The big corporations, and here's where we're going to get a little, not really conspiracy theory, but just things as I see it. Uh, the government, the big corporations, all of the people with money don't want us, the common people, to own anything. They want to control our access to homes, to movies, to music, to everything. Why do you think streaming music has become what it is? It's because they want us to pay a monthly subscription fee to access our music rather than owning it ourselves. Same thing with all the streaming services. It's all about control and ownership. They do not want us to have, the physical media. They do not want us to own our homes. They want us to be at their mercy. And that's one of the many ways that they can make that happen. So I've been on a physical media kick really since the beginning of the year where I'm trying to make sure everything that I love, I have a physical copy of. And I've been pretty successful. I'm making headway in my list of essentials. And then, after watching the Pee Wee documentary, I realized, and by the way, as much as I love Pee Wee, Big Top Pee Wee, not on my list of essentials. But Pee Wee's Playhouse, while it's something that is more of a, every once in a while I might watch an episode type of thing, I still felt like I want to own it. It's the kind of thing that's so special and so unique and so significant in my life that I do want to own it. Even if I never watch it for the rest of my life, I want to know that I can whenever I want to. So Shout Factory had on sale their Blu-ray collection and the deluxe Blu-ray collection that came with a bunch of stuff that really I realized I don't need, but I ordered it anyway. But I now have the complete Pee Wee's Playhouse series on Blu-ray. But you know what I didn't think to look at is if the Christmas special is on here. Because I don't know how it was, I don't know how it relates to the show. I don't know if it was considered part of the run or not. And it's not immediately, oh, wait a minute, here we go. Oh my gosh, is this really the list of everything? Oh, wow. Yeah, so this is everything from Ice Cream Soup, which is the first episode, through Playhouse for Sale, which is the final episode. It The episode count is by season, so the first season's 23 episodes, second season's 23 episodes. Plus, this has interviews with members of the cast and crew, which will probably be the first thing that I jump to. But it does not. Oh wait, there it is. Pee Wee's Playhouse Christmas Special with audio commentary. So this was part of the regular uh, series. It was episode 3 of season 2. So excellent. Oh, and then Dr. Pee Wee and the Del Rubios, which, by the way, a little subversive, right? That sounds a little potential for some raised eyebrows there. But that is excellent. So now I now have it all and can be very happy with that. But I recommend to you get your hands on the physical media you love, because the road we're going down is not going to empower the people. We are losing more power each and every day, and it is only going to get worse in ways that are much more significant than just being able to watch movies or listen to music. Our rights are in peril. So just stay sharp, keep an eye on things, be aware of what's going on. It's already too late, but awareness can help you protect yourself and your loved ones, hopefully to some extent. And on that bright note, what else is going on? So I went to my buddy Noel, co-host of Audible Interlude. You may know him as Crapshoot. Went to his birthday party last night, and he has got a fantastic house. And this is something that I realized, and I meant to ask Noel about this last night, but we were both we were a little buzzed on tropical beverages, and just talking about other things. So I have long said that I never want my toy room to look like a museum. I'm not a fan of Detolfs. I'm not a fan of these glassed-in cases and this aesthetic that you see online. That to me is a little snobby, of like, look at my toy museum, and everything is behind glass, and to me it just looks boring as shit. I'm not interested in that. And if you're into that, cool, good for you. I'm glad you've achieved the look that you want for your collection. That's great. It's not for me. And I realized where my aesthetic comes from, because I've always said I really want it to look more like a mad scientist lab than like a museum. But watching Pee-wee's Playhouse, or watching the documentary that had tons of footage from Pee-wee's Playhouse, I realized that's what this is. This is Pee-wee's Playhouse. That's where my aesthetic comes from. And going to Noel's house, he has got, I feel, a similar aesthetic, not just in his toy room, but in the rest of his house as well. They've built an incredible tiki bar called the Fishbowl that I wish I had had more time and less people around to investigate, because there was just so much cool stuff in there. Very, very carefully curated room with a great atmosphere. That I believe, and I want to ask him about this, I believe it was a carport that was transformed into this room, which we have a carport as well that I've long wanted to do something with, but everything costs so much now. And then downstairs he has a toy room, he has a viewing room, which is, really kind of what I've got. We've got about the same amount of space. It's just that he determined his larger space was just going to be like a classier screening room. So, I mean, it's just decisions we make about what we do and where things go. But a really beautiful house, wonderful party, had a great time. The toy room was killer, and I wish I had gotten some pictures, at least to share on the Audible Interlude Instagram account. But I always feel weird about, hey, can I take pictures of your stuff to put up? That's I don't know. That's weird to me. Got to catch up with some friends who I hadn't seen in a while. As we get older, it just gets harder. Well, not harder and harder to get together. It's just as easy as it ever was, but it's just about the time, the bandwidth, the motivation, the energy. It's not harder to get together. It just takes more willpower, I guess. I don't know, but I got to hang out with my buddy Jay, who did a lot of artwork for Needless Things, was a guest on our 200th episode. Was a big part of the beginning of Needless Things for sure. Got to hang out with him a good bit. My pal Terry, who also has done some stuff for Needless Things. They actually, Terry's band, the Mystery Men, used to provide the interstitial music for the show back when it was formatted just a little bit differently. So just cool to see people, to hang out, and just to hang out. Because I have a serious problem that I've talked about before where I feel like, well, I just tend to plan things around work. So if I'm hanging out with friends, we're probably doing something for the game show or the channel or a podcast or something or other. It's like work related. It's not just hanging out. And last night was just hanging out, and it was pretty wonderful. It was very nice. So that was cool. Find time to just hang out with people if you can, and I understand if you can't. It's tough. What else? I know there were a couple other things that I wanted to mention during this intro, but they're kind of escaping my mind now. I've got the next 2 weeks of reviews set for the Needless Things YouTube channel. Check that out. I've got a lot of fun stuff. Super 7 item, a couple of Masters Universe Origins items. Always fun. I always just try to have fun. So go check those out. Tell your friends, like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. Hit me up. Follow Needless Things channel on Instagram, which I'm pretty sure is shadow banned or whatever it is, because there's no way we get as few views as we get. Like, it's ridiculous. So shoot me a message there if there's something you want me to talk about, or a topic for an episode or something like that. Send a message. That's probably the best way. Or you can email me, phantomtroublemaker@gmail.com. If you've got a thing you want to talk about, or again, if you just want to suggest a topic, I want to get back to doing some more roundtable stuff. It's just that I happen to have so many interviews lined up, and I still haven't put that Stellarfest stuff up yet, which again is a good problem to have when there's just, the interviews are a critical thing that I want to be sure I keep going and stay on top of. I would love to get to the point where I'm doing 2 episodes a week, where I'm doing an interview and a roundtable type thing. I would, depending on what happens in October with the job situation, maybe I'm going to be doing stuff 5 days a week. I would love to just be doing this 80 hours a week, whatever. I don't care. I would love to get to a point where that's feasible. And I got to think if you just work hard enough and you do enough, that somehow it'll work out and come around. But also, I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I'm not there yet, but I've never had the opportunity to focus on nothing but this stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, it's going to be good. It's going to be opportunities to do things, and it's going to be more stuff like talking to folks like Carlos from Rise of Nexus. Cool conversation. He's got some great ideas, and I look forward to seeing how he develops them. So enjoy. I love talking to toy creators on this show, and this episode we have got someone who's creating toys, but oh so much more. Carlos Espinoza, welcome to the Needless Things podcast.
How are you, Dave? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great, and thank you for coming on. I'm excited because I Instagram for this show has been, in a way, the great communicator, where I've found new concepts, new toy lines, whatever, and made connections with creators to come on the show and talk. But it's also a very visual medium, so you kind of sometimes just see the pictures and you're like, oh, that looks like a cool thing. And Rise of Nexus, which I saw as, oh, it's a cool new action figure line that you are responsible for. And we'll get into the details of that in a bit. But it's so much more than that, because it is also a tabletop game.
That's right. Yeah. It's also, that's pretty much how it started. It started as a tabletop game that plays with any action figure in your collection. But as I started developing and working on it, and I was like, I can't really have a tabletop game that's about action figures without action figures. And maybe that was just an excuse to start an action figure line.
The folks that I've talked to, it is often like, well, I had this idea for this, and then it turned into making an action figure line. I think we're all kind of just looking for that excuse.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I've always wanted. This is something I've always wanted to do. So, I mean, it's a cool, way to present it. I didn't want to just do. I didn't like, no offense to anybody else, but it's just, it's not that it's just another O-ring line. We are also a tabletop game, and I'll be showing more of that, like probably later in the year or next year.
So for anybody watching or listening that wants to check it out, you can find some information at solidraven.com. And then you can also take a look at, and I'm guessing Level 7 Toys, is that who's responsible for the figures themselves?
No, so Level 7 Toys did the 3D prints actually,
Okay.
that you see right here. So these prototypes and the ones that I sent out to you, which you have some.
I do.
It's Yeah, he helped. He printed out a bunch of figures. I think like 40 of them for this purpose to just kind of give away and show off. Since I missed out on Joe Fest and the Dallas Joe Show. So I was like, well, how can I show them to people if I'm not, really going to have a booth there? So
Right, right. So for the listeners who are not watching, which by the way, you may as well go watch it on the Needless Things YouTube channel because there's some cool stuff to be seen. I got to open this up. This video will be up this week on the Needless Things YouTube channel, and I've got two of the figures right here. And I've got to say, I love this concept of you being able to send out these prototypes thanks to 3D printing. Like where
right,
did
yeah.
because I haven't seen that before. Where did that concept? Is that just something that you're like, well, wait a minute, why can't we just send some of these out to people? How did that come
Yeah, I
together?
mean that was pretty much it. It was just like I missed out on Joe Fest was sold out. All the vendor booths were sold out. I mean, there was at least 3 or 4 that I checked that I missed out on. So I didn't want to, do a Kickstarter or do a thing without people actually seeing the figures or seeing the sculpts and the details on them. Um, so I hit up Dennis from Level 7 and was like, "Can you print out a ton of these for me?" And then I'll put them together and put
And I
the
love the way
cards
these are
together and
done
everything and send them out.
because you've got them on a card back. There's a little sticky tab on the blister so that you can pop the figures right out. And I said during my review, I mean, these are going in protectors and getting hung up on the wall because this is just such a cool thing to have to really
Awesome.
get a look at the sharpness of the sculpt. The soft goods on this guy on Sleepwalker, at this scale, I'm sure you know this as well as anybody. It's tough to get these kinds of soft goods to look right, and the way that this hood is sewn, the way that it hangs, like it looks impressive, and they don't always at 1/18 scale.
Yeah, I was pretty blown away at the actually that one is different than the one I have somewhere here. I believe it's here. So this is the actual production prototype.
Oh,
So
nice.
the soft goods on there is different, but I had a guy that I know, Hypervillainy. He made some using the specs from the factory just for this purpose, just for the prototypes, and
Very
they came
cool.
out like yeah, those came out really great.
So I'm intrigued. Like I said, as I was opening the box up, which I love the character designs, and I also like. I want to talk about this a little bit because you've got a sticker sheet, and then there's a set of cards in here, and I like the fact that we're actually seeing different art styles of the characters. So often, what you see with something like this is the exact same image over and over and over again throughout all of the marketing and packaging and everything else. And I like that we're actually seeing. It just makes it seem a little fuller and have a little more personality. That the cards have a certain look to these characters on them, and then the sticker sheets have more like what's on the packaging. It looks like.
Yeah, just trying to make it. I mean, it is a real thing, but trying to make it seem like it's a thing that's been around for a while, I guess. Yeah, my friend Eddie did the card art. He did the illustrations on the art. I designed the cards themselves, and then I did the trading cards. I did the illustrations for those. I was gonna do the card art originally, but I knew I wasn't gonna be happy with it, and that's why I talked to Eddie about bringing him on. And he's also I've known him for like 20 years, and he's an amazing artist, and I couldn't be happier with the cars. I mean, they look amazing.
Well, and then another piece of what you said, kind of making this feel like it's been a thing, is the cross sell pamphlet, which is very reminiscent of the old, Kenner and Hasbro pack-ins that would come with the vehicles that show you everything. I love that too. So very, very cool set here, but we got to get into the idea of a fast-paced strategy tabletop game is very appealing to me. We do game nights from time to time, as I think a lot of
Oh,
people
awesome.
do now, and it's tough because typically when we get together and do a game night, we're gonna be hanging out 6 or 7 hours or whatever, but we're gonna play a lot of games. We don't want one game to take 6 or 7 hours. And we recently played a strategy game that was not fast paced. It was not a put it on the table, figure your stuff out, have some fun playing for a little while, and then pack it back up. It was too much. And I like the idea, like what was the because I noticed the verbiage everywhere is fast-paced strategy game. Were you aware that you needed to sort of sell it as this is something you can sit down and play, as opposed to, well, take an hour to set it up and then,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's the thing. I love playing tabletop games. I don't play a lot of them because of that. It might be I don't have the patience, but I did want it to be something that's quick to pick up, quick to learn the game. Just, the rules, once you learn them once, you don't really need them after that. And you can teach it to somebody else quite easily. Although, yeah, the rules are finished, but every time I read them, I'm like, this is this is too complicated, or at least to me, it sounds complicated, but when you play it, it's actually not that. It's just simple math, rolls of dice, and then some strategy, as far as like where you want to go and set up your characters and things like that. So it's kind of like a culmination of all these things. Like for one, it's like that old GI Joe game, the tabletop game called Commando Attack. I don't know if you remember that,
it
and you
had
could
it
actually
came
use the
with
GI
the
Joe.
cardboard cutout pieces, right? But
Right.
said
Yeah.
you can use your Joe figures with this game.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I always wanted, like, always since I was little, I wanted that game. I remember going to the store. I would always pick up the box, and like I thought it was such a cool idea. And really, I mean, this came from that, and also playing with my son and the way he kind of plays. He has like this video game mentality to playing with action figures. So it was kind of a way to like be able to play, have some rules, but also anybody can play. Kids can play, adults can play. And then the idea that you could bring your own toys, it doesn't have to be the Rise of Nexus characters. You could bring anything you want, your custom figures, reaction figures, anything in that 4 inch to like 1/8 scale. Um, uh, and then from that, it just spawned into where we're at now, making making action figures for the game.
So let's get into the background of where all of this came from. And we'll start with the toys, even though the game was kind of the start of the concept. We usually start with toys here on the show. Uh,
Yeah.
what were you playing with when you were a kid? What were the brands that made you a toy fan?
Definitely Star Wars was the first one. I was born in 77, so I mean or 78, sorry, but Star Wars came out in 77. So my uncle was 10, and so he was still playing with toys at the time. So that kind of just, he would babysit me, and we would just pretty much from that. And then my dad just happens to be a big comic book nerd, Batman nerd, DC nerd specifically. So I'm sure that also had something to do with it. But I just never grew out of toys. I always, even in high school, I had toys on my shelves. I still had girlfriends and friends, and still went out and got in trouble. But they've just always been a part of my life. So, but yeah, definitely Star Wars, GI Joe was the biggest one. Mask, I love Mask. And still today, I mean, still new toys today. I see that I'm like, I wish, I wish I had the space for that.
Yeah. Well, and that becomes an issue like real fast. And that's, I mean, you can see looking behind me, the craziness going
Yeah.
on back there. And, you mentioned Mask. That new Mask line is launching sometime. Well, pre-orders
Yeah,
open in the sometime in the next week or so, I believe. And I'm like, where is this going? Because there's no way I'm missing out. I had a few, Mask was one of those lines for me. You know how like you would have your main line like Star Wars, GI Joe, and then there'd
yeah,
be other lines that you had like two or three things from, and that was it. And that's Mask
yeah.
was one
Oh
of
yeah,
those for
absolutely.
me. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. No,
excited about.
I had. No, I'm excited about it. I did. So you said pre-orders already launched? I didn't even
Well,
realize
I
that. Is
think
that?
they're supposed to launch at the beginning of June because they announced
Oh,
it's
okay, okay,
Big
okay. So
Bad.
right.
Yeah, yeah, just a few days from now. Well, at beginning of June, that could
Okay.
mean any time in the next 2 weeks. But uh, I think
Yeah.
their Big Bad toy store first, and then rolling out to other places, which is fine by me because Big Bad, do your pre-order and you'll get them. You haven't got to worry about
Oh my
pre-sellouts or
God.
anything
Yeah.
like that.
When GI Joe would come back from war, they would, have to take care of their kids, and Mask usually was the kids. That's because they were like the perfect scale almost. We
That's
would take them out
great.
to the movies on Friday night, and then they had to go back to war. But yeah, that's I love Mask. Those were awesome. Those were awesome vehicles and the figures too.
Well, it was a great middle ground between GI Joe and Transformers because you had the transforming vehicles and you had
Right.
the figure characters to interact with them. So it was really a smart thing to put out there. Uh,
Yeah,
so
and
yeah, I
when
was
Hasbro finally did those Transformer GI Joes, I was like, my God, finally, they finally did it. Like I've been waiting my whole life for this, for a his tank Megatron.
see the GI Joe Transformers crossovers. They were a literal dream come true for me. It's something I never thought would happen, but that I always wanted when I was a kid. Because that was part of my issue with the Transformers is there were no they were the characters, but I still wanted human characters to interact with them.
Right. Yeah, there's somebody had to drive the transformer or at least, maintain them.
And I would love if they could expand that line into actual like GI or I'm sorry, actual Transformer vehicles. Like I'd love to see an Optimus Prime that's actually Optimus Prime. As excited as I am
Right.
for the possibility of them doing like a Mobat or whatever, like I want a big rig. Like that would be
Right,
great.
right, right. Yeah, and Roadblock can, drive it or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I was kind of the same way. I never really. I think I may have had like 1 year in high school where I wasn't collecting, but even then, I think about the Toy Biz X-Men stuff,
Oh yeah.
like that, all of that. I don't know that I really ever did stop. Um, so the obviously the O rings, the 4-inch scale were the perfect size, as you said. Hasbro figured that out, or actually, I don't know. I'm not sure. Did Hasbro do that GI Joe game?
Oh no, I think that was Milton Bradley, I believe, who
Yeah,
did that one. Yeah.
that's what I. Yeah, that because most of the stuff that wasn't toys was some other company, but it is interesting that they had that direct connection to the figures, to using the figures with the game.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a neat idea.
but yeah, they figured that out years and years ago. But was the idea of these being O-ring figures like was that a lock from the start, or was there a process to figuring out what would work best?
No, so I mean, the first thing was trying to figure out what size figures. Like I wanted to try to do 6 inch since it's so popular now, and everybody's so into 6 inch. But then it would make the board incredibly large and where, you would have to play on the floor, and we're too old to be sitting on the floor
Yeah,
and
you're not
playing games.
kidding. Oh my
Yeah, yeah.
gosh.
So the idea to do O-ring, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it's a nostalgia thing for me. I think they were so cool back then. When I first saw them, they blew my mind as far as toys. 'Cause I guess I had so many Star Wars figures, and those, they were kind of stiff. So when you saw GI Joe, it was mind blowing. And I thought about the other O-ring lines that are out there, and why not? There's no reason why there can't be more O-ring. Uh, it's just a cool little. It's weird, but after Classified came out, I kind of fell in love with O-Ring again. I don't know what happened there, but I got rid of all my Classified and then was like, no, I
We
like this old stuff.
we've talked about it a lot on the show, trying to figure out exactly what it is that's because we talk about on Audible Interlude, we talk about everything from Classified to O-Ring to modern scale to whatever. And I think what we've come up with is the O-Ring is so like Classified is big. It's not a like when you've got it in your hand, you're posing, you're putting accessories on, like it requires a lot. That
Mhm.
modern scale, the super articulated ones have so much gear and stuff on them that they're not really
Yeah,
fun to just sort of handle. The O-rings are just the right size. They have just the right amount of articulation. The accessories are typically simple enough. It's just a perfect little figure that there's enough to play with and be interesting, visually and, as you play
yeah,
with it. But it's also not so complicated that it becomes like a task to play with it,
yeah, yeah.
Make more
I, th- they're beautiful. I mean, I want to have 6 inch, but something about it, I don't know. I got to the point where it was just too much. There's just too many. There's too many of them, I guess, and they started getting hard to find, and I don't know. I gave up pretty much.
well, and like you said, the larger stuff just takes up more space.
It does, yeah, yeah, that too, yeah. Takes up a lot more space, yeah. And that happened fast.
So I don't know how deep you want to get into the specifics of the game since you do have the Kickstarter launching later this year, potentially September. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And just to be clear, the game won't be launching during this Kickstarter. It's just the action figures,
Oh, okay.
which are also the game pieces. The tabletop game, pun intended, has a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. It's just going to take a lot to create the art, and because it's kind of similar to like a trading card game, there's a lot of artwork involved in the trading cards because you also don't need any action figure to play the game. You can just play with the cards and move them on the board. So that'll be a while, but the action figures, if it's successful, will help bring the game to life down the road. Hopefully within a year. That's the plan.
So, can you talk a little bit about how the board is going to work? Because there are lots of different ways. You can have one massive board. You can have tiles with different environments. Have you got kind of a basic idea of how that will function?
Yeah. As far as the game and having, say, obstacles and terrain and things like that, I have thought about that, but then again, it goes back to making the game simple and easy to play. So I kind of removed those things. There are options if you want to play, say, a capture the flag or like a domination style type game that like a Call of Duty, where you capture certain points and stuff like that. Those are like an extra like a side game if you want to do that. There's also like a PvE, so you play against like a not AI because it's a tabletop game, but there's certain rules and mechanics that you can play against, um, which are all connected to the story of Rise of Nexus. But the basic game is just it's just like a 6-on-6 if you want. You can do 1-on-1 too. You can do 8-on-8, and you can play with as many human people as you want. So you could do like a 4-on-4 if you want. I mean, it'll probably take longer to finish the game when there's more people. Uh, it's kind of like chess, but you play with dice, and each character has different skills, which are basically a movement skill and an attack skill, and those are your two actions per turn. So you would roll to attack or move, and you can do those whatever way you want. You don't have to attack first or move first, um, and then it's just simple math adding the distance of like where you're going to move or how you're going to attack, and you don't have to be standing next to somebody to attack. You can be far away, so you can have a sniper who's on the other side of the board hit somebody on the other side of the board if you wanted to. But a character like a sniper moves slower than say like a like a grunt or something like that.
Right, right.
I mean, it's like I said, it's supposed to be quick. You have 6 hit points, and those you mark on the figure stand, which basically, oops, almost dropped that, but this is basically, I know this is, you said this is also an audio version, but that's basically the figure stand. So the figure stands on that, the card goes behind it, and it has all the
Oh,
stats
nice.
on the top. Yeah, so everybody can see, you can see, the opponent can see what, what your character is capable of. And then down here, which this is just the first prototype, there are sections where, I know this is black and it's hard to see, but there's like a little section here where you mark the hit points. So you mark 3 hit points on this side, 3 hit points on this side. When you fill it up, your character is down and he's out of the game.
Oh, I love it.
First team to knock out the other team wins. But obviously, there's other certain like there's specialty cards too, which you get when you knock out a character from the other team, and those change up the game. So those either speed up the game or either harm you. And those are kind of things taken from like a Call of Duty game or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much the basic of it. I know it's not the same when you're not seeing it or not showing it off, but
Well, no, but I appreciate that detail because I like the idea of the variables being sort of a thing outside of the actual move. Because one of when you were describing that, it made it more clear to me what derailed the other game that we played. It's that when you rolled the dice, you had so many options, and then there were branching things from the options. Like you get to do these 3 things, and if you do this, then you can do this or this. But if you do this, you can do there was
yeah, yeah,
too much
too many options.
complexity
Yeah.
after the dice roll, and I like those options being an outside thing. That
hmm
sounds like what you've developed, and that does sound like it's going to move. It's just going to be easier to sit down and just play.
Yeah, and that's the point. And each character has a special ability. Let's call it that. So, for example, one character can target 2 enemies at the same time. One certain character can move faster across the board, and also he there's an opportunity that he can just kill you on one try. So forget about your 6 hit points. If he gets close to you and he rolls the right number, which is, by the way, Snake Eyes, if he rolls a 1, he um, if that certain character rolls a 1, then that's it, you're dead. So there's ways to kind of speed up the game too. Um, you know, Furthermore, depending on which characters you have on the board, and those characters, they're chosen randomly before the game, and they're chosen by your opponent. He shuffles the cards for you, and he deals out the cards. So it kind of so you can't just build a super powerful team. It's always random each game. Yeah.
So this is obviously there's a lot to develop here, a lot to keep track of, a lot of systems to figure out how things engage with each other. What is your background with something like this? Is this purely a hobby thing that you found you have a skill for, or is it just from years of thinking about it?
Yeah, I think I've always loved creating. I've always loved taking things apart since I was little. It's not the first time I mean, when I was in high school, I joking around with my friends, and then I ended up like doing like a thumb wrestling ring, and I ended up making the thumb wrestling ring out of cardboard and pencils and things. And um, yeah, I don't know. I love playing games. Like I love video games, so it's definitely everything is inspired from those things. Love comic books, love science fiction more than anything else, than any other genre. But I don't know. I don't have experience making games. I mean, I might have made some games as I was younger. Professionally, I don't, but I've worked in many different fields. Like I currently work in engineering. I've worked in fashion, graphic designer for about 20 years. I do all sorts of things. I don't know. I don't really know where where it came from.
Well, it sounds like all of those things have kind of converged for
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I guess. Yeah,
I love the story about the thumb wrestling ring because it reminded me of something I hadn't thought about in years. Probably the early 2000s. I'm a big wrestling fan, and early
yeah.
2000s, my buddies would come over every Wednesday night. We'd watch wrestling. We'd play the wrestling video games, and then the pay-per-views, like Sunday nights, everybody would come over and we'd just watch the pay-per-view. But at some point, using because I had the toy wrestling ring and the wrestling figures, I developed a game. Like I said, I have not thought about this in years. I developed a game using the wrestling figures where we were rolling dice to determine like what move you could do, how much damage it did, and I cannot remember for the life of me like the mechanics of it, but it
Awesome.
just popped in my head that we're all
Yeah.
sitting around the coffee table with little piles of wrestling figures rolling dice from this game that I made up. I'm going to have to see if I can find, because I don't throw anything away, I'm going to have to see if I can find like the paperwork that I did for that.
Yeah,
That's wild.
dig it up, and then maybe we'll make it happen in the future.
Yeah, right.
We'll have
Make a wrestling game.
a wrestling
Because,
game. Yeah, I
well,
mean,
that's,
so many hours of playing like WCW, NWO with friends.
yes.
Like that was a great pastime.
Yeah, that was that one. And then that led to WWF No Mercy, which was the one that we played on the Nintendo 64 for just years. And,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
funny because I think in Japan, they had wrestling figures that were O-ring figures, but it's
Oh,
not
cool.
anything that's really happened in America. And I think the time might be right for some
Oh, yeah,
wrestling based
sure.
O-ring figures. So I want to talk a little bit more about just sort of the influences on you, because we've talked about, I mean, being into toys forever, but game wise, I liked that you mentioned playing with your son and how you noticed there was a video game like way to the way he plays. And it's interesting because it's just, we talk about that on the show a lot too, is how kids, a lot of them just aren't playing with toys anymore.
Yeah.
But it's not better or worse, it's just different from how we grew up, because when we were growing up, we had comic books and cartoons sort of directing the way that we played. And now it's, they're taking in the pop culture, the Marvel movies and whatever else, but it is video games, and the mechanics of those absolutely influence the way that they engage with toys. Going to the like toys to life video games, like the Lego game and Disney Infinity, where they're actually using the action figures to interact with the video games, which I still don't think anybody quite got that right. I think there's still a room in the market for a more interactive video game figure experience.
Yeah. Those were they were like miniatures, right? They were like little statues or whatever. Yeah, I don't know what happened. But I think the Disney Infinity, I don't know.
What we ran into with them, because the Lego game, Lego Dimensions, was the Lego one, and it used the little Lego minifigures and incorporated tons and tons and tons of different pop culture properties. And it was really a fully fleshed out game that the figures enhanced, whereas the Disney Infinity, I feel like there's more compulsion that you have to buy the figures to do the thing with the game. Oh, and then Nintendo had one as well. I can't remember what theirs is called.
Yeah, the Amiibos.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm getting us off track here, but I think there's potential for a new generation of action figures that interact with video games in a way that maybe could be a little more successful than what we saw with those early attempts.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I didn't even think about it in that aspect too. I mean, I thought about like a mobile game at some point, since it's like a a grid-based game,
Well,
right? Something like that.
And that could absolutely be, once you get this one off the ground, that could absolutely be an evolution, even if it initially starts as just a way to track the cards, the character stats, whatever. But it would also be an easy way for you to keep it updating.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually producing new cards and stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
There's
That's
something
true.
there.
Yeah,
There's something there.
There is some idea to maybe talk to some of the other O-ring companies and see if they're interested to bring their characters into the game.
Yeah.
Again, it's not like a thing that you need, but it would be a cool collectible, and just kind of
Well, even if you got with like Call Sign Longbow, Operation Recall, any of the other O-ring lines, and just did a thing where you did an expansion pack that were their
Exactly.
characters that
Yeah.
was compatible with your game, like that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an idea. That's a plan. The game, like I said, we're still developing, so we're still like the game is done. It needs some play testing and it needs visuals, basically.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
it
yeah,
is. And then I have to decide what size the board has to be. But yeah, I mean, as far as that, like bringing, like the idea too is like to say at a show at a con, take the game to the con and have competitions, and
yeah.
everybody brings their own toys and, just it's a cool thing to see, everybody playing with their toys. But it's
Well,
just,
and yeah,
like Sesame Street versus G.I. Joe or something.
well, and like you said, people bringing in custom figures and using
Yeah,
those, like it's a way not only to get people to engage with each other, but also to show off skills like that. Like, here is my
exactly.
custom character. Check it out.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
that's
exactly.
awesome. I love that idea. Um, so as far as the artwork goes, are you how are the duties going to be there? Because I know a lot of the card game, like just the card based games now, bring in kind of a lot of artists to work on
Hmm.
those pieces. Are you considering doing that? Or are you looking at the
Yeah, I
duties
did.
yourself?
No, I did think about, bringing like, four artists or something or at a time, or whatever, just kind of divvy it up. But yeah, I would love to do that, of course. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. I mean, it all depends what Eddie, if Eddie wants to do any or not. Like my buddy Eddie who does the
Yeah,
card art. So we'll see. I mean, that's something down the road. Once the starter's over and hopefully it goes through, then my my plan is to focus on the tabletop game,
yeah.
fully and get that going.
Oh, and you mentioned Joe Fest. It is worth mentioning Level 7 Toys, who printed the prototypes for you, will be at Joe Fest. So if folks want to check
Yeah,
them out, definitely go. They're at level7toys.com, which I notice is currently down because they're getting ready for Joe Fest, which is right around the corner.
yeah, yeah. I don't. I mean, I don't know when. I don't think wave two is being worked on right now. I was kind of hoping if they did finish, he could print them, but I'm not going to bother him until after Joe Fest.
Yeah,
He's got a lot going on.
well, and Joe Fest has become well, all of these, because we've got Toylanta and Joe Lanta are both here in Atlanta, and those have both become much bigger over the past couple of years. Joe Fest last year was massive and looks to be even bigger this year. Like it really is something that because we're going to have a table there, we're doing a couple of panels there, and it really is like now is when you start finalizing and
Yeah,
getting everything together to get ready.
crunch time. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. What else have I got in the notes here? What else was there anything else that you wanted to hit on? We've talked about the game, we've talked about the toys. As far as just the process of designing these characters, these figures, what's involved with that? You start you start with an idea of who you want the character to be, I'm sure, but where does it go from there? How does the process work for you?
I basically started with a bunch of different characters, like 12 different ones, and yeah, I don't know, if you're a G.I. Joe fan, obviously some of these designs might look similar or familiar, um, and that was done on purpose, which because it's just the way I want to try to way to bring these characters into O-ring so they fit already into your collection. But it also kind of fits with the story that it's a kind of it's not really like a multiversal story, but there is some aspects to that. So the story isn't really about a team of tactical soldiers. There's some Mad Max elements to it, and there's other characters. I'm starting off with these particular ones, and once wave two is done, then we'll move on to more like I said, more uh, end of the world apocalyptic style designs. But yeah, so like I was saying, I started with a bunch of characters and started narrowing it down from there, and then started kind of mixing. grab one thing from one, mix it with the other. Um, and then till we got here, and these were the ones I was happiest with, like Seiko, for example. He you know he is inspired by another character, but also kind of made him a little older, a little more rough around the edges, I guess. Not as young. Yeah, there's Seiko.
Seiko, who
So
reminds me of somebody who's been in the comics we've been reviewing lately, that in the comics he's in seems to age from 8 to 18 and back over the course of a couple of years. If
yeah,
he's the character that I'm thinking of.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, we originally I wanted to give him a younger look, and all of these are kind of inspired by actors and movies. Um, but in the end, the artist and I decided that he needed like an older feel to him, and kind of looks like another actor. But
And then, of course,
yeah,
this
I
one
don't know.
also
Night
Night
Owl, yeah.
Owl, also taking some inspiration from a familiar character, which I dig because seeing this style, this homage in O-Ring is very, very cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love that when he came out in the 30th Super
Yeah.
Bowl. Yeah, what was the 30th anniversary? It was cool at first to see a new character. Like wow, that doesn't happen all the time. But then
Mm-hmm.
for it to be so cool, it's a really neat design.
Yeah, they managed to do some, I'm not going to say unique because, again, well, with everything now, nothing is 100% original, period. Everything that we produce,
No,
everything that we
right.
create is kind of an amalgamation of our pop culture that we've taken in, through our lives. But they did,
Yeah,
characters that were new to Joe. They did a lot of cool things in that time, and it's unusual because with a franchise that old, it's kind of tough to get fans to accept new stuff like that.
yeah,
And I think most of the characters they brought in,
right.
people were pretty accepting of and dug.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was a really neat design. But yeah, I mean to see him, I was like, wow, I'd love to see him in O-ring. So let's see if maybe we can make it happen.
So do you start with a look and then develop a personality afterwards, or do you start with an idea of who the character is and then draw around that?
I started with the look first. I started with the look because of I didn't really have a story idea for them, when I was when or because this is the tabletop game. The tabletop game needed something like a reason for them to be there. Like, what is their purpose for them fighting? And I've had this idea, this story idea, for almost 20 years now since pretty much I met my wife. And I've always had it in the back of my head, and I always think about it, and I always add to it. And when started thinking about the game and the story, it just kind of made sense that it kind of made sense to bring those together, because the story in the end, towards the end of the story, there is which I guess I should explain what Rise of Nexus is. Rise of Nexus is the arena where these characters basically are in prison, and they are forced to fight in there. Even though at some point in their lives they used to all work together and be friends. So that's kind of what's different about this story. It's not necessarily a story about good guys versus bad guys. It's more like a story about survival, um, and these friendships that basically get fractured. Um, uh, and we're also working on the story too in the meantime, but that's pretty much the basis of it.
Now, are you looking at any other kind of media, like a comic book or a source book or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely comic book, maybe even a novel. I think when I first started thinking of the story, this idea of the story 20 years ago, it was going to be a novel, like a science fiction novel. But when I think about it and the game and the action figures, then it just needs to be a comic book. So we are working on writing we wrote like an ash can, basically, me and my buddy Manny. Um, and then from there we're going to kind of write the main story and release the comic with the tabletop game down the road. But for now, like I said, we only have the action figures.
Hey, that's a good starting point because again, we're in that O-ring renaissance right now where that is a hot aesthetic. People are dying for more O-ring stuff. So I think it's smart to go ahead and get on that, give the brand some notoriety, let people know about it, get them into it, and then, once people are into the brand, guess what? You've got more media, more engagement, more interactivity. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's also I'm really the only person behind this. Like my wife, she's like, "You're not gonna take a break," and I was like, "If I don't do this, then it doesn't happen. Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
pick up the slack for me. I gotta be the one." So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, but so I'm doing what I can handle right now. I thought about doing the comic with this Kickstarter, but it's not gonna happen. It's gonna be impossible to do. So
Well, and
take
that's
my
good
time with
because,
it.
well, I think something that tends to sabotage these a lot of the time is when the people behind it kind of don't realize how much they're taking on and don't pace themselves a little bit better. So I think it's good that you're recognizing, like, look, this is what I've got the bandwidth for right now. Let's get this off the ground
Yeah.
and then grow from there.
Yeah. I got a full-time job and kids, so I gotta also pay attention
Right,
to that
right.
too.
You got to balance it. Well, Carlos, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on, talking about Rise of Nexus. Everybody check out solidraven.com. Follow Rise of Nexus on Instagram. Anywhere else online we need to be keeping our eyes on?
No, that works. Definitely, if you go to the website, sign up for the emails, we'll be making announcements closer to the Kickstarter and stuff. And then the Instagram, I try to update it as much as possible.
Well, awesome. Thank you for coming on the show and talking, man. And I look forward to seeing where this thing goes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it.
You have been listening to a Needless Things production. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the very best in toys, movies, music, and pop culture. Until next time, be kind and like what you like.